Uh, well, at the risk of being redundant, let me echo what Mike and Bobby said, and tell you how much I appreciate you having me on here. I really do appreciate being a part of this. It's interesting to get this question after what Mike and Bobby both said, because I do think that it's really important to remember that the people that we're dealing with are just that. They're just people. They're people that we need to have relationships with. They're people that love their university. And for me, fundraising is not something that I ever really thought I would get involved in when I got into this business. It's not something that came naturally to me. It's something I had to grow into, and something that I had to learn from the beginning about. And I did experience a lot of that fear and apprehension when I first started going out and visiting with people. And what I learned is that it's really not about showing your love for fundraising. It's not about anything other than showing people that you have a passion for that university and a passion for the mission of the university and a mission for the athletic department. And if you really do believe in the mission of what you do, uh, then your donors pick up on that, and they feel that, and that's what they want to support. They want to support you. When you walk in the door, they automatically want to support you. So if you can show them that you have the same passion that they do, that's what they want to see. And so I'm fortunate to be at a place that I support the mission of. I feel invested here, and I feel like Mississippi State supports my values, and it's easy for me to support the values of Mississippi State. Um, I was nodding my head while Bobby was talking because I feel like Mississippi State and NC State are probably very similar. We have very similar types of fan bases, very similar types of alumni. We have a lot of first generation college students here, so it's very fulfilling to watch them do what they do. It's very fulfilling to go visit with our alums and see what they've been able to accomplish, and see them want to give back to the university in a lot of different ways. So I think that for me, that's the key is can I make them feel the love for the university that I have, and make them feel a connection there. And as long as I can convey that to them, then I feel like I'm going to have a lot of success getting them to be involved with the university and getting them to give back, which is ultimately, like I said, that's what they want to do. You just have to make sure that you can show them that our values align, and I think that's ultimately what's most important.
Thanks, Mike. All right, JJ, I got a question for you. What are your top three characteristics for a great fundraiser?
Yeah, well, first off, I want to echo like everyone else. Can't thank you enough, Wale and Mark, for setting this up. All the listeners, hope everyone's staying strong through this challenging time. There's a lot of characteristics you think about that makes a great fundraiser, but the three that kind of rise to the top for me, I'm going to group this first one: emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills. I think you need to have that. I think that's really important when forming strong, long-lasting relationships. I think you're going to hear relationships a lot in this call tonight. Relationships raise money. That's really important to be genuine when you're building those relationships too. The second characteristic for me, and maybe it's because I'm Italian, but passion. Passion is really important. Passion about who you represent, what you represent, your job. I think having great passion leads to being genuine, leads to positivity, leads to having that drive to do what we do in this industry. So passion's an important one for me. And lastly, I'm going to say persistence. I've worked with a lot of good fundraisers, and I've worked with a lot of great fundraisers. And I think the one thing that separates good from great when it comes to fundraising is persistence. I think, in life and in this career, you're going to get knocked down every now and then. A donor's going to decline your proposal every now and then. There's things that are out of your control. You got to be persistent, and you got to keep going after it every single day. And, so those would be the three characteristics that kind of rise to the top for me when thinking what makes a great fundraiser.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Alvin, how did you learn to embrace failure?
First of all, I want to echo everyone else so far. Thank you guys for putting this together, and also thank you to the listeners for taking time out of your evening to be involved. But honestly, man, I learned how to embrace failure through experiences, and I've had probably one of the most unorthodox paths in this industry so far. And I would just start by saying, back to experience when I was a GA. Honestly, I thought I was doing a really good job, and I was young, needed to mature, needed to grow a little bit. And the first time that I was passed up on a job, I actually left the industry and, and got into coaching during college baseball. And for me, 2 months into that position, I wasn't happy because I knew I wasn't doing what I was called to do. And so there, I needed to grow, needed to mature. And that's when I kind of dove into really networking a little bit and changing my networking style. Well, my networking style originally started out being on the phone and blabbing off at the mouth, telling people how great I thought I was, this and that. And then I just really started to set up calls and just listen to people who had, been on the same path that I was trying to travel. And that really helped me grow a little bit, actually helped me grow a lot. And I was actually given another opportunity to get back at UAB. And so me just going through experiences and actually listening, learning was really how I kind of embraced failure. And it was a blessing because it's hard enough to get into this business, but it's one thing, it's another to get in, get out, and get another chance.
Thanks, Alvin. Tom, let's wrap up the first round with tell me about your career path and what spurred your initial interest to work in development.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you and Mark for putting this together and all the listeners as well for joining in. I think this is awesome. And I know just seeing the panel and who all was involved, I was honored to be considered to be one of the people on this panel. So I feel like I have a unique path and kind of where I am today. Parents growing up always told me, they said, do something you enjoy, you'll never work a day in your life. And in college, I was in a management class, and the professor said one of our projects was to shadow an industry we thought we wanted to work in. So I instantly thought about growing up as a kid and my parents living on a college campus, basically on the weekends, going to Duke football and basketball games. And so I reached out to the AD at UNCW at the time and started working in the facilities department at UNCW in athletics. And honestly, I thought that's what I wanted to do because that's all I knew. And after graduating college, looking back, I probably applied for jobs that I wasn't qualified for. That's why I didn't get them in the facilities industry. And I think that was the best thing that happened to me because it gave me the opportunity to accept an internship with IMG College up at Duke. And that was the best thing that could have happened for me and I was in the ticket sales and services department. And that was just something that got me out of my comfort zone. And I was able to come to work and see how that sales staff interacted. And I just gained so much love, such a huge level of respect for those guys because they did it the right way. And that's where I was kind of first introduced to seat obligations associated with season tickets. So that was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. And then having the opportunity to go to UNCW and work in the ticket office, I was able to take things that I've learned from Duke in that 10 months that I was there and utilize them at UNCW. And from that time at UNCW, you're a smaller shop. You got 2 people in your ticket office, your development staff's 3 or 4 people. So you work closely together. And I remember donors would come in all the time, and I just started loving that face-to-face interaction. I would get to them, and I would build relationships with them, and I would get to know them. And as soon as they would leave, if they would tell me something, and I thought maybe that our development staff needed to know that maybe we can kind of grow their giving, I would call my buddy at the time, or still is my buddy, Alvin Franklin, and we would always talk, and I would leave him in on any conversations that I have with those people. And just building that relationship with our development staff and that ticketing position, that enabled me to get my first opportunity and my first full-time job in college athletics.
Wow, man. So you never really know where you're going to end up, where you start. So really appreciate that.
Awesome. Mike, as being a leader, you're always looking to find new ways to implement programs. So when you're trying to buy gain in with your peers and the people that work for you, what are some of the strategies that have worked for you?
Well, I think when you're trying to gain buy-in, the first thing is that people need to have some trust in you and some faith in you, right? And so you've got to be authentic so that they're actually going to hear your message and listen to your message. When you're trying to gain buy-in on a new program, it's really important that you articulate a clear, compelling narrative that you can repeat and that people can recall. People deny it all the time, but people are naturally resistant to change. They just are. And so no one would ever say, "Oh, I'm resistant to change," but a lot of people behave that way and they don't even realize it. So you really have to demonstrate to them, what value this new program would bring. And one of my favorite tactics is to try to undercut arguments that you anticipate might be used against it by acknowledging that argument against it before someone else does. I think if you're able to establish what maybe some of the cons are and respond to those before someone challenges it, it really takes a lot of steam out of someone's desire to maybe try to prevent the program from happening. I think, from a political standpoint, it's always helpful when you can to try to talk to individuals who might be involved in the program one-on-one to try to explain and get their buy-in one-on-one. Because if it's a decision that's going to be a group decision or multiple people involved in it, if you can sort of divide and conquer a little bit, I think that's always useful. And then I think in the end, if you meet resistance, it depends on what kind of program it is. It could be a variety of different things, right? But just as an example, this isn't a fundraising program I'm going to explain, but at Charlotte this past year and at some other schools in the state, we were allowed for the first time ever we were permitted to sell alcohol at athletic events at our facilities. And so what we did is we developed a plan that we proposed to our board of trustees as a pilot program. And the idea behind it was, look, let's test this with our fans to make sure that we don't have any issues related to the operation of the program at our football stadium, at baseball, at basketball, that we don't have an increase in alcohol-related incidents at our events. And then we will assess it again at the end of the year. And not that I really thought we were going to have resistance from our board, but I think that gave them peace of mind that they had an out if things didn't work out. And it gave us a chance to roll the program out in a quote unquote experimental way. But the reality was it went great. We met just recently with the board. They approved, didn't even think twice about approving it on a permanent basis. So pilot program is another strategy or tactic that you can use as you develop your strategies. But I think that, again, I think the most important part of this is developing sort of an authentic, clear, articulate message. It's clear, concise, that people get, that they hear, that resonates with them. And again, in your argument, in your proposal, make sure that you undercut any anticipated cons to that proposal.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
All right, Mr. Purcell. So with this business being based off of meeting new people, can you take us through your process of a discovery visit?
Should be one of the fun parts about our job, and assuming that you have done your prospect research properly and have thorough information about your prospect. It's one of the most fun things we do, in my opinion. You guys that have worked at NC State know this. I ask a lot of questions, and I try to get to know the person. First of all, you got to go into the meeting with a sincere interest in that person, not just you're doing your job. You really got to really want to get to know them and try to find the good in them. One thing I try to do in my life, faith's a part of this too, but I've always tried to find the good in everybody, because there's good in everyone. Sometimes it's harder to find it in others, but look for the good in someone, don't look for the bad. When I go on first visit to get to know the donor, I ask a lot of questions, and the conversation should be about that person or their family. It shouldn't be about you or your school yet. You should just find out about them, make sure they understand you're sincere about it. And there's ways that you might see things that you didn't find in your research. When you go in, look around the office. If there are pictures of grandchildren, or there are pictures of a golf outing or a fish he caught, or You kind of understand what his hobbies are, what he likes to do or she likes to do. There's two things that everybody will talk about. They'll talk about their family. They'll talk about their career. You can kind of get them talking on those two things, family and career. Then you'll get to know them well. My staff teases me all the time. They say when I go visit someone, I find out the name of the dog that the person owns before I leave. To me, that's a compliment because I do ask a lot of questions, but I do it in a very interesting way. I try to make sure they know that I really care. I really want to know them whether they make a gift or not. Another good thing I think, if it's depending on the person, I like to go to lunch with somebody. I think when you're over food, it kind of takes the pressure off of them, takes the pressure off of you. You can kind of share the food and talk, and you're not in a very serious environment. You're more in a relaxed environment. I like lunches, dinners are a little more formal and kind of put a little more pressure on both of you. But I think breakfast or lunch are great times just to break bread and talk about them and get to know them. And don't ever go ask for money on the first visit. Get to know the donor. The second time you come, you talk more about what your school needs, and then start exploring and developing a plan for that particular donor. But those are simple things. I don't have any magic answers. Just get to know them, care about them, and win or lose, whether you get the gift or not, make sure you don't forget about them. And you never know if people come back later, you treat them right the first time.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Bobby. Mike, so what characteristics do you look for in a student athlete, intern, or graduate student coming into your office? Did we lose Mike?
Mike, you unmute. Mike, you unmute.
Yeah, I'm muted. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
You mentioned Alvin had some experience at Mississippi State. Alvin was a graduate assistant for us, and we're still looking to find one as good as him, and we're failing in that endeavor. So if you know Alvin, that's what we look for in a graduate assistant. But interns, and I tell I'll come at this from a little bit of a different perspective. I've got four kids. Two of my kids are college students here at Mississippi State. They both have internships here in the athletic department. Neither one of them in development. They both do their own things, and I don't interact with them at work, which is the way I think they both would prefer it. They do their own thing, but I did tell them both the same thing when they told me they wanted to get into this area of the business. I said, look, this is a competitive business. It's a competitive area to get some kind of work, whether it's an internship, a GA position. Certainly when you want to try to get a full-time job, it's exceptionally competitive. It's competitive when you want somebody to write a letter of recommendation for you. It's competitive if you want somebody to make a phone call for you about a job that's out there. And so you've got to differentiate yourself in some way. And sometimes the way to differentiate yourself is to be the one who's always there, who's always willing to do something, who's always willing to work, whether it's work an event, whether it's be the one who shows up at 6:30 in the morning and puts out the A-frame signs, be the one who shows up at 11 o'clock at night to take up the A-frame signs, whatever it is, be the one who's always willing to volunteer. And that's getting to be something that's a little bit more rare. When I got started in this business, that's pretty much what we all did. We did whatever it took, and we worked a number of hours, and you just did whatever needed to be done. And that's what we look for, to be honest with you. We want somebody who's dependable, who's on time, and who never says no. And that's what I tell young people. That's what I told my own kids. Be the one who never says no. You don't want to be the intern who, when we're at an event and we see somebody new and I ask the person who coordinates our interns does a great job. And I don't want to look at our intern coordinator and say, oh, did we get a new intern? And she says, no, that guy's been with us for a year and a half. You don't want to be that intern who's been with us a year and a half and we don't recognize you. You want to be the intern who's been with us for a month and we've seen you everywhere, and we already know you. So I think you want to be the person who is always willing to do everything and is always looking for new challenges and asking questions and wanting to be involved. That's what we look for. That's the person who's going to provide the most value, and the person who becomes somebody that we start calling and asking to do things, and not somebody who's just going to volunteer for projects, somebody that we depend on.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
So JJ, as you know, things in this business can go at a very fast pace. You can be in one job 1 year, 2 years down the road, you can be in another job. Think back to 5 years ago. Did you envision your career as it is today?
Well, I'd be lying to the group if I envisioned we'd be on a 2-month lockdown here during COVID-19. So I did not envision that part of it. But yes, 5 years ago, I was at Duke University during a $3.25 billion campaign, preparing and working extremely hard to be in a leadership fundraising role today. So yes, and I was supported through that because I had great people around me at Duke and mentors at other schools that understood my goals, where I wanted to go in my career, and have been a huge boost to me to get me where I am today. And I'd say, for all the young folks listening, something that really helped me when I was young, getting out of grad school, I put together a roadmap, a career map, of milestones, experiences, responsibilities that I wanted to take on throughout my career. So when I got into a leadership position, I had that experience. It's not that I know it all now. I'm still learning so much, but I can look back at times that I learned a lot, and I can, again, experiences I can reflect on that have prepared me for the role that I have today. I think at that same time when I made that roadmap, I was 25 years old. I did not have kids. I was not married at the time. So I think it's okay to make adjustments to that plan as you grow and mature. I have 2 kids and a wife that also works now. That's a lot different than what it was 10 plus years ago. So you can adjust on the fly, but having that plan, at least for me, has really helped to put me on track and have some direction to get where I am today.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Justin. So Alvin, how do you manage to balance home life and professional life while also focusing on your career and getting to where you want to be?
Well, Mark, honestly, in all transparency, man, this is actually a good question for me, because this is something I honestly struggle with. That's probably one of my biggest weaknesses. I'm starting to get better at it. I would say that me being a young guy in my career, with not being married yet, not having any kids, when you start having some success, you start to kind of become a workaholic and try to become a perfectionist in some ways. And so for me, something that I've kind of so much pressure on myself, and celebrating small things, so I'm able to, on the way home in the car every day, reflect that if it's just, hey, might not have closed the gift today, but I kill those contact reports. Hey, I got this trip a month out. It's already planned. All the details are already booked, and I'm able to, take a step back from work once I get home, and then also take advantage of weekends. Man, we work a lot of weekends, but whenever there is a weekend where there's no sporting events going on, and also it could be one of you traveling that weekend. Take some time off, take some personal time, and enjoy yourself. Have some fun.
Thanks, Alvin.
All right, Tom. Now, this seems like a simple question, but obviously, once we dig into it, things get a little bit deeper. What is your why, and how did you discover your why?
Yeah, I think that my why is because I truly feel that every day we come to work, we have the ability to have a positive impact on someone's life, whether that be raising money for scholarships to reduce that financial burden when they graduate college, where they can graduate with no to minimal student loan debt, and also raising money for facilities so they can train and have the best experience while they're here. But it goes even further than that for me. By us having that funding in place and hosting these sporting events, we're bringing people on campus every day. We're bringing kids on campus. We're bringing families. We're bringing strangers, and we're bringing all these people together, and they're all cheering for the same team. And that was big for me because as a kid, I was on a college campus every weekend, like I said earlier, and having that early exposure to a college campus is what made me want to go to college. And I remember sitting at a Duke basketball game as a kid with my dad. And while I wasn't athletically gifted enough to be a D1 athlete, I remember sitting in Cameron Indoor Stadium with my dad, just like, man, I want to be a part of something like this one day. How do I do this? And this is kind of me being a part of that. But like, I'll be honest with you, as a development coordinator going into that role, being a fundraiser was kind of terrifying to me. It was my opportunity to have my first full-time job, but as I mastered my roles in that position, it was more of an administrative role. But as I mastered those roles, I wanted to take on more to continue to grow. And some of that came with calling donors, just first-time donors, and thanking them for their support. And then it got to renewal calls. And once I saw that I could do the renewal calls, it excited me. And I got excited to call people and kind of just share our brand and share my passion for the university.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Tom. So for this portion of tonight's event, we have asked a few people in attendance to ask our panel some questions. So leading off this round is Mike Hill.
Good evening, Mr. Hill. My name is Madison Hennig, and I am currently the marketing professional assistant at IPTAY. Thank you so much for knowing what you know today. What is some advice that you would give?
Thank you. So it may have been difficult for some folks to hear. I'm not sure if they could hear her question or not, but she's asking about what advice would I give my younger self when I was taking on my first leadership role. And I also want to just acknowledge that I very much appreciate a bright, energetic staff member from Florida State University asking this former Gator a question. It's a great question. I think that we all look back, right, when we're first starting out and you realize maybe all the mistakes you made along the way. That's also how we learn. It's the best way to learn, in my opinion. And I look back when I was first in a leadership role, how very little I knew about actually leading people. What typically happens is when you start out in the business, you demonstrate your skills and your abilities, and maybe you thrive in that role, and people take notice. And so they decide at some point to promote you and elevate you into a role where you're supervising and leading people. But there's a step that's missing typically in there, and that is actually training you to be a leader. And so while you do learn a lot, but by observing others, by observing great leaders, especially when you're younger in your career, you may not be self-aware enough to actually think about those things. So I think it's a great question, because it's going to happen to most, if not all of you who are on this call. You're going to be in a situation where you're thrust into a leadership role at some point. And so I think the most important thing for me as I look back is that, I wish I understood better at that time that people are more important than tasks. And, there's a difference in managing and leading. And it wasn't that early in my career as a leader that I didn't care about people. I did. I cared a lot about people, and I tried to be invested in them as much as I could. But I think I was probably a little bit more task focused at that time. And that's not necessarily the best way to lead. I think another piece of it too, when I look back, is that you don't really realize that how much people watch you when you are in a leadership role. If you're, for me, I'm like, hey, I'm still me. Nothing's changed. I'm in a new leadership role, but I'm still Mike. But the reality is that people, quote unquote, look up to leaders, even if we're all really, we're all the same, right? We're all equal, but you're in a leadership role and people do look up to you. And so again, to have that self-awareness and understand that, your actions and your words mean a lot to those who you lead. And then, I think it may have been Alvin who said this earlier. If I've misattributed it, I apologize. But the last thing I would say is this: when you fail, and you will fail, and if you don't, you're not trying hard enough. You'll learn more through that than any success that you have. I know when I look back, on my career, I've learned more from my mistakes and my failures than probably at any point in my career. And when you're young and you're starting out in the profession, and you're a hard worker, there's a tendency to want to be a perfectionist, to think you have to get everything exactly right. And failure is just that. It's just failure, and it's a train wreck, and you're in the ditch. And what am I doing? No, I mean, you learn from those mistakes. You learn from those failures in a way that's just really hard to explain and describe. I think the more you mature into your role as a leader, you recognize that and realize that, because it also allows you to mentor those who you're leading, so that when they do fail, you can be there with a word of encouragement. You can be there to help them understand that this is a growth opportunity. Now, you repeat the same mistakes over and over again, you're not learning, you're not growing. Okay, but if you fail, you learn from that, then you know what, you've grown, and you're better as a leader, and better as a team member. So those are some of the pieces of advice I wish I had had when I started out in my first leadership role.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So from Western Illinois University, we have Tyler Johnson here. We're gonna try to play it. If the question doesn't go through, I'll repeat the question.
How's it going, Mr. Purcell? My name is Tyler Johnson. I'm a grad assistant focused on athletic administration here at Western Illinois University. First off, I really want to say thank you for your leadership. My question is, from your experience, what are 3 characteristics of a great leader?
So if you weren't able to hear that question, Tyler's question was, what are 3 characteristics of a great leader? Bobby?
Well, Mike did a great job hitting on a lot of the important factors there. There are a lot of definitions of being a great leader, a lot of characteristics of a great leader. But 2 or 3 that I think are really important. First of all, you got to be yourself. People will see through you quickly if you're phony. You got to be who you are. Early in my career, well, most of my career, Dick Sheridan, who was our football coach, I was on his staff for a while in the 80s. The greatest leader I've ever been around. He just was a born leader. And sometimes leaders are born, sometimes they are developed. And I was not born with the talents he had. And when I first took over the Wolfpack Club, I tried to be like Dick Sheridan. I tried to emulate him, and then I began to realize that there are a lot of qualities he had that I didn't have, and there were some qualities I had that he didn't have. I think you just got to be yourself. You learn from your mentors, learn from people around you, but develop your own set of principles, your own way you do things. And first of all, I think you got to be yourself. The second thing, Mike touched a little bit on this. You really got to care about your people. You can't be phony there. You can't hide it. You can't disguise it. You either care about them or you don't care about them. We all know people that are phony when we're around them. You don't have the respect for them that you do somebody that you know really has your back and cares for you. And I think part of that is you got to care for everybody in the organization. At the Wolfpack Club, and I've said this many times, there are 4 or 5 people on here that have worked for us before. They've heard me say it. I could take a month off in the Wolfpack Club, technically would be fine if I didn't show up for work for a month. But if our receptionist or our janitor didn't show up for 2 days, we got chaos. So in many ways, they're more important than I am. And I think you look at an organizational structure, don't treat the people at the top any different than you treat the people at the bottom, or any better than you treat the people at the bottom. People at the bottom of the structure really are at the top in so many ways. And I know a lot of leaders that ignore those people on the grassroots level and just pay attention to the people that have positions of power. Don't be like that. Care about everybody in your organization and treat them all the same, the best you can. Respect the jobs they do. I tell everybody here, be the best that ever did your job. Whatever your job is, don't demean yourself. Be the best person that ever. If you're the janitor, be the best janitor there ever was. If you're a receptionist, be the best receptionist that there ever was. And I had a boss one time also when I was in football. His name was Tom Reed. He was our head coach. I was on 3 different staffs here. And one thing about him, he cared about me, and he had confidence in me before I had confidence in myself. And that changed my life right there. He was a head coach, and I was kind of the bottom of the totem pole, and he trusted me and respected me and had confidence in me, and that changed my whole career path. And the third thing I think kind of tie in with all those is be truthful and be honest. Don't ever lie to your people. Don't ever sugarcoat things. Try to be honest. Be truthful. Good, bad, or indifferent. They'll see through you if you don't tell them the truth.
Awesome. Thanks, Bobby. So next up, we have Sarah Watson from UNC. Awesome. And Mike, if you couldn't hear that, Sarah's question was, when meeting a donor, how do you handle uncomfortable moments?
Well, thank you. Thank you for that question. And, I'll follow up a little bit with where Bobby stopped. I think the most important thing there is to be honest. You can't do anything really in all your situations with your donors. You can't do anything significant if you're not being honest. Whether you're asking for a gift, whether you're talking to them about, most of the conversations I have with our donors, I deal mostly with ticket priority and things like that. So whether you're having a conversation with them about seat locations or parking lots or anything like that, you have to be honest. You can't try to tell them that you're going to be able to come through with something that you may or may not be able to come through with. If you spoil that relationship one time over something that's simple, it could be explained honestly, then it's spoiled forever. And Justin mentioned something earlier when he was talking about qualities of a good fundraiser, about being genuine. I think you have to be, in all conversations, whether they're difficult conversations or not, I think you have to be genuine. You have to be honest. A lot of times when we're dealing with donors, whether we're asking for a major gift or whether we're just talking about transactional giving, we're dealing with limited inventory items, whether it's level seats, whether it's Final Four tickets, College World Series tickets, whatever it is. And we have to be 100% honest with what we can or cannot do for our donors. And we found, at least I found personally, that some of the more uncomfortable conversations that we've had have resulted in some of the better long-term relationships with donors, because I think they appreciate that. And when I first get into those conversations, they may be upset or disappointed, but I think over the long haul, they appreciate the fact that you're honest with them and you tell them exactly what it is. And they come to understand and appreciate that you're not willing to mislead them or sacrifice your system. Bobby talked about system, and in transparency, our system is very, very similar to the Wolfpack Club system in terms of priority and rankings and how we allocate things. So I think they appreciate the fact that you're not willing to sacrifice your system and what you have in place to be fair across the board. You're not willing to sacrifice that to try to close a gift. So it's related. It has resulted in what I think are some of the better relationships that I have with donors, just by being honest with them and being upfront and not sugarcoating things, as Bobby would say. So that's been my experience, is that honesty is always the best policy.
Thanks, Mike. We'll start off with, or go with JJ next. So JJ, we have a question from Lamont Love from Kentucky. His question is, what practices do you recommend for dealing with nervousness when speaking to donors?
Yeah, I think that one, probably depends on the scenario. I think, And there's gonna be times that, you know, you or someone on your team maybe made a mistake, and it's important to fall on the sword, you know, and I think it's an opportunity for you with the response to over deliver and not over promise. I think, you know, there's gonna be times that you got to face a donor that's maybe upset about a personal situation, maybe like the outcome of their seats or their parking. We all deal with those conversations. I think in that type of situation, it's really important to actively and patiently listen, because a lot of times they want to vent. And I think in those cases, you can kind of introduce or remind that donor of the why and the mission that your fundraising organization's about, you know, and that's finding more funds to support your student athletes and your great university, you know. But like, you know, with the nervousness, like, try to focus on your foundation, which is the relationship you've built. You know, we've all had challenging or tough conversations with our parents or loved ones or friends or colleagues, but if you really focus on the relationship that you have with that person, it shouldn't be as nervous or challenging of a conversation. You know, you've built something there where you can have that comfortable conversation. So don't overthink it. It is definitely a part of this industry in fundraising. If that's not something that you, I want to say but want to do, it's probably the wrong industry. But again, focus on that relationship that you've established, because that should lead it to an easier conversation.
Thanks. Up next, we'll have Alvin. We have a question from Emma Olson from UNC Charlotte. And her question was, how do you learn to embrace risk-taking?
I would honestly say probably two factors really that just don't have anything to do with fundraising, to be honest with you. The first, I would say, I was a center fielder in Little League, high school, and also in college. I played center field. And so playing center field, you know, there's always a moment in the game. Make the decision. Do you dive for a ball or do you not? It can change the whole scope of a game. Do you throw a run? Do you try to throw this runner out or not? Which could change the momentum of a game as well. And then I also would say really where I'm from. I grew up in the inner city of Jackson, Mississippi. And anyone that knows me knows I love where I'm from, love my community. But at the end of the day, just being honest, a lot of people don't make it out my community where I'm from. And so for me, taking advantage of every day, knowing that I actually am blessed with the opportunity to pursue my dreams and do what I do on a daily basis. And so that's, to me, you know, my risk-taking mentality.
I appreciate that. It's not turning mountains into turning molehills into mountains. I like that. Really appreciate it. All right. And up next with Tom, we have a question from Jake Sutter that's representing the MAC conference. How can I stay connected to key influencers who do not work in the same office or geographical area?
Yeah, I remember growing up all throughout college, my professors and even coworkers when I was in an internship always stressed the importance of networking. So I remember a time when I was a development coordinator early on at UNCW. We didn't get to go to NACTA every year. So I know one year in particular, I reached out to a couple guys in the Power Five that were directors of the annual fund, just shot them an email and just asked if they had time to jump on the phone to talk. So when a few of them called me back, and when I'd get on the phone and talk with them, I would first introduce myself, kind of tell them what I'm doing in my current role. And there was always two questions I would ask them. And that was, what are you looking for in an individual when you're hiring for someone on your team? And then I would follow that up with, what can I be doing in my current role to help make me ready for that next step? And I think we have tools like LinkedIn now. LinkedIn's awesome. I'm still connecting with people on LinkedIn. And then another thing is, like, when you're coming up in the industry, there are going to be people that come and go. Keep in touch with your peers that are going to other institutions. I know that's been very helpful for me in my new role. I've been in a new role for 3 months now, and I've relied heavily on people that I've crossed paths with that are at other schools now, just so they've helped me make this a smooth transition here at Clemson for me. And then another one is if your school does have the luxury of sending you to NACT every year, take advantage of it. Go to the sessions, sit on the front row, introduce yourselves to whoever's leading each session. I know that played a big role in me in getting my job here at Clemson. Last year at NACTA, my current boss was speaking at a session, and went in, sat on the front row, and after the session, just went up and introduced myself to him. And later on, when I was here interviewing at Clemson, he said that was one thing that stuck out to him was that after the session that I came up and thanked him and introduced myself.
Thanks, Tom. And to finish things off, we also asked our panel to share some words of encouragement to our guests. Leading off this round, we'll start off with Tom.
Yeah, my word of advice would be, for me, had I never gotten out of my comfort zone, I never would be where I am today. I wouldn't wake up every morning and get excited to go to work because I never would have found fundraising. So anytime you can get out of your comfort zone, do it. I know it doesn't feel good, but it's going to make you a better person because of it. And then, as was mentioned earlier, relationships are such an important part of what we do. Build a genuine relationship with your donors, with your coworkers, and with peers in the industry, because those people are going to make you successful in what we do here. And lastly, if there's ever anything I can do, I wouldn't be where I am without the assistance and without the help of others. So if there's anything I can ever do to help someone, feel free to shoot me an email. My email is twade2@clemson.edu. Would love to help in any way I can to advance anyone's careers in this industry.
Also, before we go to the next person, I just want to state that we do have a list of all the participants that have RSVP'd and reached out to us, and we'll be sharing this recording and also that list. So if anyone wants to reach out to anyone that's participating through their LinkedIn, we'll put that information out there. So it'll be their name and institution that they're representing. So this is obviously an opportunity for people to build their networks and learn from each other. So just keep that in mind. Up next, we'll let Alvin share his words of inspiration and encouragement.
I would say that, when trying to matriculate up the ladder through this business, understand your why, know why you want to be in this business. It's probably my first point. I'll also say that use job postings as kind of your cheat code. Not saying go and apply for every job, but use those. If, for instance, if you're a full-time intern right now, you're trying to get that assistant director position, or if you're assistant director trying to get the director position, use those postings to know you're dotting I's and crossing all T's with those experiences to make sure you're ready for that next step. And then with network, make sure that your network is diverse. You have a diverse group of different people, different race, different gender, people from different regions. Make sure you hone in on that. And then also, work for good people. Seek out to work for good people. And I've been fortunate that, from working for Mike, start off my career with a bang with Mike to where I am now with Tim House, who is, who's awesome. And, those people, care about you care about me as a person. So I think that that's always important.
Thanks, Alvin. Up next, JJ.
Yeah, well said, Tom and Alvin. Definitely agree with you guys. We'll try to add on to that. I can't stress enough the importance of strong mentorship in this industry. My number one mentor happens to be on this call. It's an honor to be sharing this with him right now. But Bobby Purcell, I wouldn't be where I am today without Bobby, both professionally and personally. I can remember 10 plus years ago being in Raleigh, North Carolina at a coach's caravan, eating barbecue for probably the 30th straight day. Bobby putting his arm around me as I was kind of looking at the job market and deciding, what job I should take. And I remember him saying, don't worry about titles. Don't worry about who gets the credit or all those other things that you really can't control in life. What he kind of echoing what he said earlier, worry about what you can control. And that's being the best, person that you can be in that current position that you have. Work hard to be the best fundraiser you can be, whether it's the assistant director or director. Focus on the responsibilities and the opportunities, definitely early on, because if you do those things and you worry about yourself and not all the distractions, advancement and growth will come. People will notice you. You'll get other opportunities. Someone said it earlier, it might have been Alvin. It's really hard to break into this industry, breaking through the title tonight. But once you get in, there's a lot of people out there looking for good people, and it's a strong network fraternity. So worry about what you control. If you do well, it's going to be noticed, whether it's at your institution or another institution. And finally, take a moment every day you're working and understand how much and have fun. Enjoy what you're doing. This is a hard job. It's long hours. It's a lot of weekends. Enjoy what you do. Love what you do. I think that's really important. And I think especially on I want to be an athletic director. I think a lot of us do. You may want to be a head coach. You probably are going to have more fun early on in your career than you do when you're up top. I know that there's more maybe money and cool things that come with being at the top of this industry, but you have a lot of fun early on too, and don't forget that.
Thanks, JJ. And we'll go off with Mr. Rainey down in Mississippi. Follow that up.
Yeah, I will. I guess really, I don't want to repeat anything that anybody else has said, but I guess the main thing I'll say is just that it can be hard to break in, but you will not regret 1 minute of the effort that you put in to get to where you're headed. So stick with it, work hard. I can tell you that those of us who are participating in this tonight and that are talking to you tonight, well, I think we would all agree that the best thing we've ever done is stayed the course and gotten the jobs that we have and have put in the effort to be where we are. I would not change anything. It's gotten me to this point. And I think everybody would say the same thing, that this is a fun job. We do work hard. We do work a lot of hours. We do work a lot of weekends. We do work a lot of nights. But I would not trade it for any other career, for any other job out there. So do not be discouraged along the way. Like everybody else has said, work the network. Reach out to any of us anytime. We'll help if we can. This is a tight fraternity, so a lot of us do know each other, and just stick with it. Keep working hard, and you'll get there. You will get there.
Thanks, Mike. And we'll go to Mike and Charlotte next.
Thank you. Again, I don't want to repeat a lot of what else has been said. You all have made some really, I think, great comments. So instead, what I would focus on here is this. These are obviously unusual times that we all find ourselves in. None of us on this call have ever experienced anything like this, whether you're an intern or an AD. Okay, so we're all in the same boat trying to figure this thing out. But it's my opinion that there are going to be some incredible opportunities throughout this crisis and past this crisis, particularly in development and in revenue generation. And I think that the focal point is probably going to pivot a little bit more to people and maybe less to buildings. It's right now people are trying to figure out. Obviously, some schools are trying to figure out how to stay afloat and preserve their institutions or their programs. But I also think that for many of us, this is a chance actually to come through a crisis and to be maybe reimagined in a way that could be really exciting and positive. So for anybody who may be feeling a little bit down about where we find ourselves today in this bad movie, it's going to end at some point, okay? And we will get through this. And people need to have faith in that and belief in that. And I do believe that this particular part of what we do, the development piece and the revenue generation piece and the relationship piece, can be absolutely critical to the future of college athletics. And don't forget why we do what we do. I think sometimes we tend to lose sight of why we're in this business because we get wrapped up in the busyness of it all. But first and foremost, we're in it for our student athletes, and that's not just lip service. Like, it's why we do what we do. And if you ever lose sight of that, then you've lost your way, and you need to remind yourself of that. There's nothing better than watching our student athletes grow and learn and compete and become leaders, and when they graduate, to be the best possible version of themselves. That's why we do what we do. But we also are a really, really important part of the fabric of the universities that we are representing. Okay, the power of college athletics, I think, is really unparalleled, and that's not hyperbole in my opinion. You think about the absolute pure joy that college athletics brings to the constituents that we represent, the students, the staff, the university community, alumni, friends. I mean, there's nothing like how athletics can galvanize so many different people from so many different backgrounds and experiences. And so, what we do is connect people in a way that is really, really powerful and extremely valuable to university because of the passion that we can bring forth. So let that lead you and let that inspire you, as you're making your way through this business and trying to find your way in this career path. This is a very competitive business. There's no question about that. And for many of you who may be early on in your careers, you may at times feel frustrated. You feel like you're ready for the next opportunity. And when is it going to happen? Well, I can promise you it's not going to happen if you give up. You have to continue and persist in working hard, and those opportunities will come if you do a great job in the role that you're in. So focus on the role that you're in and do a great job in the role that you're in, and connect with people. Understand relationships in the end are what make this work. You will have those opportunities, and you will break through. So thank you guys so much for the opportunity to visit with you guys tonight, and really enjoyed all the panelists, and you had some really, I thought, incredible remarks by our panelists tonight, and I appreciate being a part of it.
Thanks, Mike. And we're going to wrap things up with Mr. P. Over 30 years of service, so you definitely have some gems that you'd like to share with us. So, Mr. Purcell, could you finish us off?
Thank you, Wale and Mark, for putting all this together. It's been quite an honor to be a part of it. Some very good people on here, and Justin, thank you so much for those comments. They mean a lot, but you give me too much credit. Kind of what's been said, kind of a lot of things I was going to say too, so we're all on the same page pretty much. But one thing is, don't worry about your title, and just do your job. And like I said earlier, do it better than anybody's ever done it. People will take notice, and you'll move up. Another thing that goes along with that, don't ever forget where you came from. Don't ever forget that the people coming along after you are searching for the same things that you searched for at that stage of your career. When I first got in this business, I was a little intimidated by the terminology and the concepts and the so forth, the complexities of point priority systems, rankings, and seat rights. It's really not brain surgery. So if you're just getting into it now, some of those things seem intimidating. Don't worry, they'll all come to you. They're not that complicated. You just got to take it one day at a time. And if you are in a situation where you're struggling with certain things, don't be ashamed to ask questions. The only bad thing is to not ask questions. Ask questions on the way you're going to learn to get better. And I just saw a quote I want to read there. I just saw this the other day. And I think it really hits on a lot of things that we're talking about today. And this is not my quote, but I really like it. It says, sometimes the ones who work the hardest and give the most are the quietest about what they've done. That is called honor. So have honor in everything that you do, and be honest in everything that you do, and care about the people around you, and you'll all be successful one way or another. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Bobby, and thank you everyone on our panel. I especially want to thank Mark Hoover for calling me up 2 weeks ago and say, hey man, I got an idea and let's try to make something work, and dragging me along and being able to build my network and allow me to be a part of this. It really does show as a testament where just being an intern and working with someone could be. On August 1st in 2017, me and Mark started working together at the Wolfpack Club, and who would have thought almost 3 years later, we still would have a working relationship and we would be able to build something like this together. So thank you, Mark, and I'll let you finish things off.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to our panel, our guests. I'm speechless even sitting here and hearing you guys, and I have a personal relationship with all you. But it's still awesome to hear the words of wisdom. We're wrapping up tonight. I just want to thank you guys so much again, our guests, our panel, the people on the back end that help make all this work for us. Thank you guys again. I hope you have a great night. Like I said, I'll follow up with everybody with an email with this recording and my contact information. If anybody ever needs anything, please feel free to reach out. Thank you guys and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Everyone take care.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mark.
Thanks for setting this up. Take care, everyone.
Y'all have a good one. Thanks.
Stay safe.
Y'all have a good one. Good night. Thanks, everyone. You stop the recording.